Good morning, everybody. Uh, so, paternalism and social justice. This has been on my mind. Uh, the ruling dichotomy when it comes to economic justice. And by dichotomy, I mean something that is reductive, partially incorrect, and perpetually repeated, which in the parlance of our times means that it is truth. Uh, is that liberals care and Republicans don't. Now, there is some truth to that, some actual truth to that, particularly when you take a look at the sorts of policies that Republicans tend to be in favor of. You know, corporate deregulation, environmental deregulation, cutting the social net, uh, all for our own good and all for the high and mighty dollar. And you can also take a look at the sort of bootstrap rhetoric that they tend to use. You know, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Uh, that they use to demonize the poor and the homeless in this country. And you can get a sense that there is some truth to that particular stereotype. But, first of all, that doesn't play out person to person, and so it's overly general and kind of broad, which is part of my problem with that attitude. But there is something on the other side as well. There's just there's some very it's very real, very really well intended folks, liberals on the left, who want to solve these problems, who want to solve the crisis of poverty, who want to solve the crisis of homelessness, who want to solve the crisis of addiction. They want to solve, they want to solve, they want to solve. And that's all well and good. And they will step up and they will say these people need a voice. These people, these homeless people, these addicts, these people who are not being treated with dignity, they need a voice, and we can be that voice. And then they will proceed to stand up and tell everyone, including the people they're theoretically supposed to be speaking for, being the voice for, what the score is. It, the problem is, though, is that a lot of the people who are trying to tell everyone what the score is don't even have any idea what the game is about. And I could talk more about sort of the historic and systemic roots of the demonization of the poor and the homeless in this country. It's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and it actually, this sort of demonization precedes our culture. But I don't want to talk about that. Instead, I just one of the issues that I keep running into, and this is what this puts me on the outside of every single sort of useful political discussion or potentially useful political discussion that I've ever almost been a part of. Because I reject party affiliations and both major political parties. I'm locked out of the conversation because I reject the rhetoric. You got the rhetoric on the Republican side that says, that we need to let these people help themselves. So that, or most of them were they're just leeches on society, they're taking advantage. None of that plays out, by the way. And then there's this rhetoric on the left that's like, oh, we need to protect them and help them, and we can solve this. These issues are very complicated. It's not just a matter of taking someone on the street who's homeless and sticking them in an apartment somewhere and say, here, you have a house, which is usually what happens. That's what happens here in Louisville. There are things to help the homeless, but it's hard to get help in the system and hold down a job, which is kind of crucial. And just putting someone in a home, in a house, in an apartment somewhere doesn't fix the problem. There are lots of little complex issues that no one takes into account when you're trying to transition from being homeless to having a house. Now, note how I said that, homeless, from being homeless to having a house, because a house doesn't necessarily mean that they have a home. But what it means is they are sleeping in four walls with a floor and a roof instead of on a park bench or in a tent or in a doorway. Home is a much different thing. And this idea that we can just sort of pluck people up and stick them in a house somewhere and or an apartment somewhere and that will somehow fix the issue. No, all that does is make us feel better and makes it so that we don't have to look at them for a while, which really is what uh, most homeless shelters are about. Prisons, too, by the way. Prisons really have nothing to do with punishing people, it has to do with isolating people that we don't want to look at. Institutions, too. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm talking, you know, some of that history that I wasn't going to discuss. But it's more about it, when someone comes and says to me, I will speak for these people. I'm immediately suspicious, not of their intentions or their good heart, but of what they actually know about the issue. I don't really want to speak for anybody, and that's always kind of been my problem. You know, and I've been in positions where I probably could have and should have, and a couple times I did. Maybe I shouldn't have. Uh, the problem with the poor and with the homeless is not that they do not have voices. They very clearly have voices. The problem is the people in power do not listen. So I think maybe instead of maintaining this sort of false dichotomy of liberal and Republican, because I could give shit less who people vote for, unless you voted for Trump and then you voted for a fascist who will either get us in a nuclear war to avoid being impeached or get impeached uh, because he's a fucking crook. Uh, by the way, as I was getting ready to do this video, the FBI raided one of his former campaign managers' offices as part of the Russia investigation. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Anyway, where was I? I promised myself I'd keep this under 10 minutes today. But okay, so the problem with saying that you'll be the voice of someone is that they don't need a voice. What they need is a fucking megaphone. They need access to the people who hold the purse strings. They need access to the people who inhabit the halls of power. The poor and the homeless do not need your voice or my voice. We don't need to speak for them. We don't need to tell them what to say. That is not the issue. Anyway, because anything else, I mean, you know, when you do try to say, "Well, I will speak for them," that's very paternalistic. It's very, and it's insulting. There's nothing more insulting than someone telling you that they will speak for you. Like, I know what you mean to say. It's maddening. It's maddening, and it's insulting. And these people, these human beings that people want to fix, they want to fix them like broken toys, and they're not broken toys. They're adults. Now, there might be adults that have addiction issues. There might be adults that don't have any job skills or domestic skills. One of the issues of transitioning people from being homeless to putting them in a house is the fact that they don't know how to be in a house. There's a whole skill set there that people take for granted when they've not had to deal with it. So instead of trying to be the voice of any group, the poor, the homeless, any group, don't be their voice. Don't take umbrage and be their voice. Don't assume that they need you. Don't be their voice. Help them find a megaphone. Thanks. Under 10 minutes. Bye.